And now, the general weather around Alaska.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Alaska Weather. I am meteorologist Carrie Haisley. Today is Sunday, June 9th, 2024. Now, if you're looking for your local forecast, you can find that anytime on the web at weather.gov/Alaska. If you'd like to reach me, you can do so via email, carrie.haisley@noaa.gov. Now, before I get into all the specifics of weather, water, and all the happenings around the state, I did want to highlight a temporary change to some of our services from the Multimedia program. You may notice I'm not in the studio. I'm also not one of the folks you normally see doing this type of production, but that is because we are operating with some limited resources through the weekend, this weekend, and also next weekend. We will be unable to produce the aviation weather and the marine weather YouTube recordings. However, we will continue producing this general weather segment. We're also not going to be able to produce all of our graphics. Some of the aviation and marine weather graphics will not be posted to the web. The surface charts, however, will be posted to the web. Things should return back to normal tomorrow. Dave Percy will be back in the studio. He'll be with you all week. And then next weekend, we'll have again the limited services, and then we'll go back to normal again for the following week. So we appreciate everybody's understanding while we work through this interesting time. So now a quick look at what's going on with our hazardous weather summary here. So we have multiple watches, warnings, and advisories around the state. So first look is a red flag warning across interior Alaska, highlighted there in red. This is a red flag warning for fire weather conditions, including communities like Ambler, Fort Yukon, Eagle. You are in this where we are seeing very warm conditions, dry conditions, also seeing quite a bit in the way of wind in this area. Very favorable for the potential for some fires to start in that area. Up along the Arctic coast, the area highlighted in blue is a special weather statement, and that is valid for the potential for some ice jam or snow melt flooding along some of the rivers and streams, especially the Sag River, up along the Arctic slope where it's starting to slowly melt out north of the Brooks Range. And further south, we still have a flood watch in effect for Kodiak Island. This has been in effect for the last couple of days. We'll dive into this one. So over the last 48 hours, Kodiak has actually seen over 3 inches of rain. As of this morning, it was 3.5 inches of rain. So storm total, we're looking for them to see up to 6. So getting into the day tomorrow, we could still see another 2 inches just from where we are right now. So the potential for flooding along some of the creeks, streams is definitely there. Areas with poor drainage, low-lying areas. So that is going to stick around until we get into the overnight hours, and then we should see some improvement by the time we get into the day on Monday. As far as fire danger goes, the area highlighted in red here is where we have some of our driest grasses, and that creates these extreme fire weather potential conditions. Large area highlighted in orange there, very high fire danger due to dry grasses across the state. Any lightning, any human-caused sparks, any of these things could be very dangerous when you have such dry grass, so please be alert if you're outside because of the enhanced fire danger. Now, as far as weather today, we do have very active weather, though the majority of it is occurring in the southern part of the state. There's an area of low pressure south of Kodiak Island, continuing to cause all of this rain in that area and continuing to cause the potential for flooding. Most of the other clouds on your screen there, those are higher clouds. We're not seeing a lot of precipitation elsewhere. I do want to call attention, though, to the brighter band of clouds across the Gulf of Alaska pushing its way to the Gulf Coast. That's going to bring more rain. That's going to bring more active weather to southern Alaska as we get into the overnight hours and get into the start of the work week. So for tonight, we do have that area of low pressure south of Kodiak Island. The frontal boundary associated with that continues to push north. We will see precipitation work its way into the Gulf Coast and also down into the Panhandle. Anchorage should stay dry. We're expecting downslope conditions, although a few showers certainly aren't outside the realm of possibility. Showers out along the Aleutians as well. Getting into the interior, could be a few lightning strikes along the trough of low pressure that you see highlighted there, but not looking for anything widespread today as far as shower activity there. And then for flying weather overnight tonight into tomorrow morning, again, that frontal boundary south of Kodiak Island is bringing in lower conditions, so some IFR along that, especially for Kodiak Island, and then getting into the Gulf Coast. Also quite a bit of IFR conditions expected out over the Bering Sea and also some up along the Arctic coast. But for the overnight hours into tomorrow morning, we are looking for generally VFR conditions across the interior. Now for Monday, that frontal boundary gets closer to the Gulf Coast, and we see more precipitation working its way into southeast Alaska and then into the Kenai Peninsula. Kodiak Island, you're buried underneath the frontal boundary there. Things should improve by the time we get into the day on Monday, so you should transition to a more showery pattern. And then we could see some thunderstorms develop along that trough of low pressure draped across the state for the day on Monday. Flying weather across the state for Monday afternoon, primarily VFR, low conditions along the Gulf Coast, out along the Aleutians, where we see some widespread IFR out in the Aleutian chain, potential for some IFR along the Gulf Coast as well. And then with the potential for thunderstorms developing across the interior tomorrow, there's also some potential for some icing, some moderate icing in the thunderstorms and the showers that do pop up. So we're not looking for icing outside of thunderstorms along the interior, but that is the area that they're going to be most likely. Also some potential for some icing along the Gulf Coast and then the southern part of the Panhandle with that frontal boundary and the lingering rain that's going to stick around into Monday morning. Turbulence for Monday, we do have again the potential for some turbulence around thunderstorms that develop across the central part of the state. Also still some gusty winds to the north end of Kodiak Island. That could still linger into the day tomorrow with the potential for some moderate, also some potential for some turbulence out along the Aleutians. Now finally, Tuesday's weather, that area of low pressure that's been the problem for the last couple of days south of Kodiak, it's drifting slowly southward with time, it's weakening slowly with time, and by Tuesday it really won't be the primary weather maker anymore. It should be primarily out of the way. There could be some lingering showers across the Panhandle, certainly more showers developing across the southern part of mainland. If we're going to get any rain in the Anchorage Bowl, Tuesday's probably the likely day for it. We also will continue to see the potential for thunderstorms to develop across the interior when we get into the day on Tuesday. So again, we want to be very mindful of making sure we are not starting anything that could trigger a fire, and we'll also want to keep an eye on any thunderstorm activity across that area, again because of the dry grasses that are there. Flying weather on Tuesday, lots of VFR across mainland Alaska. We do see some marginal VFR lingering across the Gulf Coast and especially down over the Panhandle. Lowest conditions, however, are going to be out along the Aleutians for your Tuesday afternoon. So now, let's get into temperatures. We'll start with Monday morning and we'll go around to the southern part of the state and then we'll move regions here. So we'll start out the day tomorrow morning with temperatures in the 40s and 50s across most of southern Alaska. And then by the time we get into the afternoon hours, temperatures only warm into the 50s for southeast Alaska because of clouds and rain that are moving in. Temperatures in the 60s across south central. Warmest conditions are going to remain in the interior. For Tuesday morning, again back into the 40s for the overnight hours, and then warming back up into the 50s across the Panhandle, 50s across south central. Note that temperatures Tuesday afternoon in the interior aren't quite as high, looking like they stay primarily in the 60s. Out west for tomorrow morning, we do see some low temperatures in the upper 30s out along the Aleutians, 40s, 50s for most of southwest mainland Alaska, and we could see some temperatures warm up to near 70 across southwest mainland Alaska for Monday afternoon. Temperatures stay in the 40s to right around 50 along the Aleutians. Tuesday morning, temperatures back down into the 40s with a few temperatures around 50 in the southwest part of mainland, warming up into the 60s across southwest Alaska for Tuesday, staying in the 40s out along the Aleutians. Finally, we go up north tomorrow morning. Temperatures below freezing along the Arctic coast, so 27 there for Barrow. Parts of the interior, we typically stay into the 50s in this pattern, and then we warm back up into the 70s for the day on Monday across the interior. Again, hot, dry potential for fire weather, especially in those warmer areas in the central part of the state. Note Barrow only warms up, Utqiagvik that is, only warms up to 33 degrees for Monday afternoon. So temperatures hover just below freezing again Tuesday morning for those lows, into the 50s for the interior, warming up again Tuesday, but not quite as warm as it has been, 72 for Fort Yukon, and then a lot of 60s across the central interior. So quick look ahead. So this is the 6 to 10 day outlook produced by our Climate Prediction Center. Time frame here, June 15th to June 19th. If you like summer weather, this might be some good news. So nearly the entire state is likely to see above normal temperatures. A couple of places places where that's not true. Everything south of Juneau favors below normal temperatures. Sandpoint out along the Aleutians also favoring below normal temperatures, but could stay pretty warm for most of mainland. And again, this is another place we're going to want to watch for the potential for fire weather conditions as we get into mid and late June. So looking at precipitation for that same time frame, most of mainland favoring below normal for precipitation. That also pushes down into the panhandle for the potential for below normal precipitation. A few places up along the Arctic coast, out along the Aleutians where we could see above, but very small areas. Areas where you don't see color, that doesn't necessarily mean normal. It just means that there's equal chances of us falling into any one of these categories. So last thing I want to cover just briefly, some marine conditions here. We do still have some ice holding on pretty tight up along the Arctic coast, 80% concentration essentially from Utqiagvik over towards the Alcan border. Starting to see some melting southwest of Utqiagvik, but we do see ice holding in the Bering Strait. And for our marine weather conditions, Monday, the strongest winds and waves are going to primarily be along the Aleutian chain and up into the Bering Sea. Right along the Aleutians, we could see some seas up to about 10 feet. The other place where we see some fairly high seas for Monday, in between kind of Kodiak Island and mainland, we could see seas up to about 12 feet, and some places where winds gust up to 30 feet. Or, I'm sorry, 30 knots. And then when we get into the day on Tuesday, we see improvement everywhere where the seas come down quite a bit. Wind also comes down quite a bit in all areas of open water. So that's all I have. I appreciate you sticking with me despite the strange location. I'm outside. You might hear dogs. You might hear a lawnmower. We will be back in the studio tomorrow. All the graphics, all the videos should be available to you. And I'll be back next Saturday for another look at weather when we get there. Have a good weekend.